Thaddeus Polhamus, Merrick Moses, Marilee Rendulich. Welcome all. Tell us what you see is happening with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And short of nuclear annihilation, can you envision an off-ramp Putin could take that would end the hostilities? If so, please describe how that off-ramp gets manifested. Thaddeus. I'm sure as a very concerned individual that you are, that you have been worried a lot about what is happening and how you see this thing working out. So what do you think?
Well, the only off-ramp that I have heard that would actually be effective is one that is absolutely unacceptable. And that was what the congressman from South Carolina suggested a couple of days ago. Not likely that anybody's going to do that.
Okay, so that's not really an off-ramp because you don't see it happening.
No.
Okay.
And I don't see any way that that Putin himself would willingly step away from this. He's gotten himself into it, and there's kind of no way for him to get out of it at this point that he could save face. And so I don't see him doing it.
Okay, before I comment on that, I want to get the other two. Marilee, describe what you see or what you predict.
At this point, I don't have a clue. I just can't imagine what he's done already. And it doesn't seem to be that, barring his inability to continue through finances or uprising in his own country, I don't know that he'll stop bombing people. And I don't know.
Do you see an uprising in his own country?
I understand there was a mini one on TV. I haven't heard more about it today. I know one of the oligarchs that's actually been ousted said that the only way is through the sanctions on the oligarchs and him. And, this financial pressure internally could help. I know he asked China for some aid, and if China doesn't go forth with it, that would be beneficial. But I mean, the threats that we're hearing, I think it's just horrific, and I'm frightened for all of us. I do think the intel that they're following is probably preventing nuclear arms. So, I'm trusting in NATO's intel and how they're responding and how they're measuring it and how they're sanctioning and not going forth with closing airspace, things like that. I think they see some significant threats there.
Okay, so are you saying that intel includes the perception or assumption that he is not going to use nukes?
I think that if they take certain paths where it appears that NATO has completely involved himself in the war, that he considers that open warfare for nuclear.
Okay, so you believe that if NATO does get in, then we are going to have nuclear exchanges. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
that's how I understand. Well, I understand that they're not recommending giving them airplanes for that very reason and closing the airspace, because they don't want it to trigger a nuclear war from him. I don't know.
Okay. Merrick?
I think he's a mess. It's terrible.
I mean, there's a lot of ways this could end. I am really hoping and chanting for the best outcome, which is a total end to this horrific bloodshed. Off-ramps for Putin could look like enormous bribes, promises of inordinate amounts of money for this, that, and the other thing. I don't think that the oligarchs can say really too much because he made them all oligarchs. You know, he's the man. He's the godfather. It is basically a Russian mafia state. He's the godfather, and you can't tell the godfather what to do if he's put you in as the head of the Department of Transportation. You owe him everything, so to speak. So, and then the other, there's other things that could happen. You got Senator Lindsey Graham saying what he said. Also too, Putin's an evil man. Who knows? He might have heart disease, and in his sleep, meet Jesus, and Jesus takes him on home. That's what I'm praying for. That he just goes to sleep and doesn't wake up. It wishful thinking, but short of that, I do know this: that part of the problems, the challenges with the planes are that the Americans saw that if the Polish gave the Ukrainians the MiGs that they promised, then Putin would say Poland is now intervening in the war, which would give him the pretense of attacking Poland, who is a NATO ally, at which time
World War III, nuclear exchanges.
Yes.
So you
Yes,
like the way the Americans played that whole scenario, even though it looked a little embarrassing. It was the safe route to go.
I mean, it was the best of the worst choices. I mean, we're dealing with a guy who literally has the whole world by the throat right now. And I think that when this is said and done, hopefully without any more bloodshed, we decide that no one person on the planet can threaten the whole world again. But that's another story for a different time.
Actually, it's a repeated story because we have already had that scenario back 70 years ago. Back to what the senator from South Carolina said, and what Thaddeus said, and what you just said about the death of this man would be how this thing gets fixed. There's one way I see him dying that would be controlled by the people who are afraid of what we're saying happening, and that is a nuclear blast on Moscow, where he is, and everyone in Moscow dying as a result.
That would be the end of the world, because the Russians would definitely attack, and then I think the Chinese would go whole hog out, snatch Taiwan, and Kim Jong-un, he's got to show how big his member is, so he'll be launching nukes to somewhere. And I think that part of the problem is that in this part of the 21st century, a lot of these leaders, they're aging and they want to create a legacy. Putin has claimed that he wants to reconstitute the USSR, and also some weird, obsession with this mythic Russian past of this united Russian empire that was pretty much never really harmonious anyway. And then the religious underpinnings that the Patriarch of Moscow gave, which was horrendous, basically saying that Ukraine is being punished for having gay pride parades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this is where we are. It's very disturbing.
I'm really I've been down on organized religion, and this is just another example in the bucket of where organized religion is just doing horrible things. Okay, now you said earlier in your comment, Merrick, that you talked about bribery, buckets of money or whatever. Do you see any way that the people of Ukraine are going to uh, agree to a kind of give Putin his a reward now after what he did to their nation?
Yes and no. The agreement would have to be crafted such that none of the disputing parties loses faith. Right? I don't know how that would look. Of course, they wouldn't want him to get paid off. Of course not. But what is the alternative? Does that look like does that look like somebody renting out a Blackwater Ops type situation and they go in and start tinkering with Russian infrastructure? Like the world is so messy right now. We don't even know what really could be done. Anonymous got involved. They started jacking up some Russian government sites. So is that the answer to cripple them on a cyber tip? I've heard a little bit of whisper about that, but I would like to know more about what that looks like. The cyber attacks.
Yeah, Thaddeus, I'd like you to weigh in on Merrick's comment about how maybe give Putin some kind of reward so he could somehow save face. Do you see how that could play out?
Well, I don't see how a financial reward would do much for him because, well, he's rumored to be the richest man in the world. He's stolen so much money from the Russian people that nobody can find it all or count it all. So I don't think that, he's not a virtuous man, but I don't think that he can be bribed in that way. If somebody,
well, how about something that looks like he's saving face? I don't think he cares about money for himself, but he certainly cares about the perception.
Yeah. Well, the only face saver that he's looking for is a capitulation from Kiev. If Zelensky would come and say, okay, we give up, we're part of Russia now, stop bombing us, then he could square his shoulders and say, okay, I won. And now let's go on to whatever we're going to conquer next, Finland, whatever.
But Zelensky's not going to do that.
No, of course he's not. I think he's having too much of a good time being a hero.
So you're basically saying that there is no realistic face saving for Putin at this point.
No, he wants absolute victory or nothing. And the trouble with the victory is that no one, he will not listen to anyone on earth. So nobody can tell him that any victory that he gets is Pyrrhic because, the people will always hate him. The only way that he can rule in any of these outlying countries is to have basically a Russian soldier on every corner. And he doesn't have enough Russian soldiers to put on every corner of every town. So there is no actual victory. The closest he could get to it would be capitulation from Zelensky,
which ain't going to happen.
Ain't going to happen.
So there's no way. Mary Lee, is there any possibility that you see any kind of face-saving process that would get Putin to think he won?
No, but I mean, I felt that Merrick raised an interesting point. Maybe not, it doesn't constitute a bribe, but maybe China can intervene on behalf
Third,
of the world, actually, because, Russia has turned to them for financial support now. So perhaps there is something they can do. China has recognized Ukraine as a sovereign nation and has opposed the invasion. So maybe through those channels, it's possible. I don't
so
know if it's a bribe. I don't
you-
know what it would be, but probably, Eric, something along
so
those lines.
use China as like a diplomatic tool. China would certainly have to agree to it, but that's the most creative thing I've heard about making this happen, because he has one ally in the world, and that would be China.
Right.
Now,
And it doesn't work for the Chinese. See, because the Chinese, if they're very strategic, they might be the ones to broker that situation. Pretty much because of their stuff around Taiwan. But I also think the Chinese are much smarter than Putin in that war on this scale is very bad for business. And the Chinese are what? They're always about business. So I think that them taking the lead on brokering this, with, of course, America always around, I think would be beneficial for all parties.
memo to Joe Biden and Tony Blinken. We came up with a good idea. Try to get China involved. Thaddeus, what do you think about having China try to be an arbiter or broker in some kind of deal that would get Putin to save face?
Well, at this point, it looks like a port of last resort. It's nobody else can. Nobody else is going to be able to talk to him. The only thing that he wants to hear from anybody is we capitulate, except for China. So, let's sit back, hold our breath, and see what they say. The talks with China are underway now. So,
when you say talks, you talking about Russia, China, bilateral talks?
Russia and China. There was one meeting that I just heard reported in the last hour that had run something like 11 hours. So, there are people from China and Russia talking to each other. But we in the West have no idea what they're saying to each other. So it remains to be seen. Watch the news tomorrow and see what happens.
But what Merrick said makes a lot of sense, that this war is in no one's interest, and China is as good as anybody in realizing that. It's not in their interest for this war to go on. So maybe Marilee may have something there. Okay. Any further comments on this particular topic?
I think another thing that we should talk about maybe at some other time are the underpinnings, the theological and religious underpinnings of this conflict, because the conflict around Russia controlling the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainians basically breaking away, and I think it was 2018, 2019, and forming their own Orthodox Church with the blessing of the ecumenical patriarch in Constantinople. It really pissed the Russians off. The patriarch of Moscow was very upset. So should it surprise us now that he's on some old get back stuff, because he is giving Putin theological cover for these atrocities? And I think that is something to explore at a later time, because it is a fascinating history, but it is also a history that reminds us that religion unchecked will kill a lot of people.
I heard recently that there are only 6% of the Russian people actually go to church.
That's true, but they ethnically describe themselves as Orthodox, although most of them don't even go to church. It's an ethnic identity more than it is actually like a religious practice.